They looked at you like you were broken, damaged, too sensitive for this world. Everyone around you treated your reactions like weakness, your boundaries like overreaction, your silence like surrender. But then, something happened that flipped the entire narrative on its head. A trained professional, someone who studied human behavior under the most extreme conditions imaginable, looked you dead in the eye and said something that shook the room. They said you have the pain tolerance of a trained operative, the kind of resilience they only see in people who've been through specialized psychological conditioning. Think about that for a second. While everyone in your life was calling you soft, fragile, or too emotional, someone who actually understands human psychology was recognizing something entirely different. They weren't seeing weakness. They were seeing a survival mechanism so advanced that most people will never develop it in their lifetime. They were seeing someone who's endured psychological warfare that would have broken 99% of people before their 25th birthday. And you're still standing, still functioning, still pushing forward like it's just another day. That psychologist didn't say those words lightly. They've worked with soldiers, intelligence operatives, people trained to withstand interrogation and psychological torture. They know what real resilience looks like when it's stripped of all the performance and pretense. And when they looked at you, they saw the same markers, the same internal architecture, the same quiet strength that doesn't announce itself but holds entire worlds together. You weren't trained in a facility. You were forged in real life, in situations that had no escape route, no backup plan, no safe word to make it stop. Here's what nobody tells you about that kind of pain tolerance. It doesn't come from one big traumatic event that you overcome and move on from. It comes from sustained, repeated exposure to emotional and psychological stress that would hospitalize most people. It comes from waking up every single day, knowing that survival requires you to function at a level that shouldn't be humanly possible. It comes from learning to compartmentalize pain so efficiently that people around you have no idea you're carrying wounds that would flatten someone else. While other people were learning normal life skills, you were getting a completely different education. You were learning how to read a room in 3 seconds flat, how to detect danger in someone's tone before their words even finished forming. You were learning which version of yourself to present to keep the peace, which parts to hide to stay safe, which emotions to suppress to avoid making everything worse. That's not childhood, that's counterintelligence training happening in real time. You developed hypervigilance without anyone teaching you the term. You learned threat assessment before you knew what that phrase meant. Your nervous system was running advanced prediction algorithms while other kids were worried about homework and weekend plans. You were calculating emotional equations that would take a trained therapist years to understand. And you did it all automatically because your environment demanded it for survival. That's not weakness developing. That's an elite-level defensive system building itself from scratch. The pain tolerance didn't come from being numb or disconnected. That's what people get wrong when they look at you. You feel everything, probably more intensely than most people ever will. The difference is, you learned how to feel it all while still moving forward, still making decisions, still protecting yourself and sometimes others. You learned to carry grief, betrayal, disappointment, and fear like background programs running while you executed whatever needed to be done in the foreground. Military operatives train for months to develop that kind of compartmentalization. They go through simulations, controlled environments, professional debriefs. You got thrown into the deep end with no floaties, no instructor, no manual. And somehow you figured out how to not just survive, but optimize. You learned to metabolize pain faster than it could accumulate. You learned to extract lessons from trauma while it was still happening. You developed an internal triage system that would impress emergency room doctors. People see you functioning and assume you're fine. They see you working, socializing, handling responsibilities, and they think that means the pain wasn't that bad. What they don't understand is that your ability to function through extreme distress is precisely what proves how bad it actually was. Normal pain lets you stop, lets you break down, lets you recover. The kind of pain you endured didn't offer those options. It required you to build a completely different operating system. You're walking around with psychological injuries that would qualify for disability in any reasonable assessment. But instead of collapsing under them, you integrated them into your architecture. You turned wounds into wisdom, trauma into tactical awareness, betrayal into boundary-setting expertise. That's not healing in the traditional sense. That's adaptation at a level most therapeutic models don't even account for. You didn't just survive the damage, you rewired yourself around it. The military psychologist saw something in your eyes that civilians miss entirely. They saw the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from sustained vigilance, the particular way your attention splits across multiple threat vectors simultaneously, the micro-expressions that reveal someone who's had to make impossible choices with insufficient information. They recognize the signature of someone who's been running combat-level stress responses in environments that were supposed to be safe. Your pain tolerance isn't about how much you can take before you break. It's about how much you've already taken while everyone around you had no idea the battle was even happening. It's about maintaining composure through psychological attacks that were designed to destabilize you. It's about holding your center while everything around you was actively trying to pull you apart. That's operator-level mental fortitude, and you developed it without a single day of formal training. Nobody throws you a parade for surviving what almost killed you while making it look easy. Nobody acknowledges the strength it takes to show up every day carrying weight that would crush most people before lunch. You've been penalized for your resilience, expected to handle more because you've proven you can, given less support because you don't visibly fall apart. That's the cruel irony of developing this level of pain tolerance. It makes people think you don't need what everyone else gets automatically. You've sat in rooms full of people complaining about problems that wouldn't even register on your scale, and you've had to nod along like you understand the severity. You've watched people get sympathy and support for struggles that represent a fraction of what you handle before breakfast. And you can't say anything, because the moment you do, you become the person making it a competition, the one who's too intense, the one nobody knows how to be around. The isolation that comes with this kind of strength is its own form of torture. You're surrounded by people, but none of them are operating at your frequency. They don't understand why certain things don't bother you that should, or why other things hit you in ways they can't comprehend. You've learned languages of pain they've never had to speak, developed senses they don't possess, survived scenarios they can't imagine. That gap creates a loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. You've probably tried to explain it before, tried to help people understand what it's actually like inside your head. But the words never quite capture it because there's no reference point in their experience. It's like trying to describe color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. They can conceptually understand what you're saying, but they can't feel it, can't access it, can't truly know it. So eventually you stop trying and just carry it yourself. Here's where it gets really complex. That pain tolerance you developed, that operator-level resilience, it saved your life. But now you're in a different environment, theoretically safer circumstances, and your system doesn't know how to recalibrate. You're still running threat detection software designed for a war zone while sitting in what's supposed to be peacetime. Your nervous system is still braced for impact that isn't coming, still scanning for dangers that aren't present. This is what the psychologist understood that most people miss. Your pain tolerance isn't just about past survival, it's about current dysfunction. Because when you can handle extreme pain without flinching, you also struggle to recognize when something actually needs attention. You've trained yourself so effectively to push through that you've lost the early warning system that tells normal people when to stop, when to rest, when to ask for help. You're living in a constant state of preparedness for catastrophe, which means you can't fully relax even when circumstances allow it. Your body physically doesn't remember how to feel safe because safety was never an option long enough to become familiar. Every moment of peace feels like the quiet before the storm. Every good thing feels temporary because experience taught you that's exactly what it is. Your tolerance for pain accidentally became intolerance for peace. The recalibration isn't about making yourself softer or less resilient. It's about learning that not everything requires operator-level response systems. It's about developing the ability to downshift when appropriate, without losing access to those survival skills when you actually need them. That's extraordinarily difficult because your system equates relaxation with vulnerability, and vulnerability with danger. You've been conditioned to believe that letting your guard down is essentially choosing to get hurt. While everyone was treating you like you were broken, something else was happening that nobody acknowledged. You were becoming absolutely formidable. Every betrayal that didn't destroy you added another layer of immunity to manipulation. Every painful experience that you had to process alone built another level of self-reliance. Every time you had to be your own rescue, you developed capabilities that most people outsource their entire lives. You know what's terrifying about someone with your pain tolerance. You can't be controlled through fear anymore. The things people use to manipulate others, threats of abandonment, social rejection, emotional withdrawal, those don't work on you the same way. You've already survived versions of those consequences that were worse than anything they could threaten you with now. You've already walked through the fire they're waving in front of your face. This is why certain people became uncomfortable around you once you fully stepped into your strength. Your pain tolerance made you unpredictable in their frameworks. They couldn't leverage your fears because you'd already faced them. They couldn't use guilt because you'd learned to distinguish between actual responsibility and manipulation. They couldn't destabilize you with chaos because chaos had been your baseline for so long that you were more comfortable there than they were. That military psychologist wasn't just making an observation. They were confirming something you've probably felt but never had language for. You're not like other people because you've been through things other people haven't survived. And that difference isn't a deficit, it's a tactical advantage. You see patterns others miss. You sense intentions before they manifest into actions. You can endure discomfort in pursuit of truth, while others choose comfortable lies. Here's what happens when you have operator-level pain tolerance but nobody recognizes it. You get mislabeled. They call it trust issues when it's actually threat assessment. They call it emotional unavailability when it's actually protective boundaries. They call it overthinking when it's actually pattern recognition. They diagnose you with problems when you're actually demonstrating solutions to situations they've never had to navigate. You've probably been told you need to let your guard down, be more vulnerable, trust people more easily. People who've never had to rebuild themselves from nothing love giving that advice. They don't understand that your caution isn't paranoia. It's data-driven decision-making based on extensive experience. Your boundaries aren't walls. They're sophisticated filtering systems developed through painful trial and error. The therapeutic industrial complex often pathologizes survival skills because they don't fit neat recovery narratives. They want you to heal in ways that make you more palatable, more accessible, more conventionally open. But what if your current configuration is actually optimal for your circumstances? What if the pain tolerance that looks like emotional restriction is actually emotional intelligence operating at a level they can't perceive? You're not broken for being cautious with people who haven't earned trust. You're not damaged for maintaining boundaries that protect your peace. You're not dysfunctional for requiring evidence before belief. Those are advanced operational protocols, not symptoms of unhealed trauma. Yes, they emerged from painful experiences, but their current function is protective wisdom, not unresolved wounds. You've learned something that most people never fully grasp until it's too late. You are your own safe space, your own backup, your own extraction team. When everything fell apart, you were the one who stayed. When everyone else left, you remained. When the pain was unbearable, you bore it anyway. That self-reliance isn't a consolation prize, it's the foundation of unshakable strength. But that strength comes with a specific kind of loneliness. Because once you've proven to yourself that you can handle anything alone, it becomes incredibly difficult to let anyone into that space. Why would you? Partnership, support, community, all of those require vulnerability that your system has learned to associate with danger. Your pain tolerance made you independent, and that independence made you isolated, not by choice, but by design. You're surrounded by people who need others for things you've learned to provide yourself. Emotional regulation, you've got that. Reality checks, you've developed those. Motivation and accountability, you've built internal systems. The things that force most people into interdependence, you've solved independently. So what exactly do you need other people for? That's the question your nervous system keeps asking, and it rarely gets a satisfying answer. The truth is, you've become so competent at surviving alone that you've accidentally made connection optional rather than essential. And while that protects you from the pain of abandonment, it also prevents you from experiencing the depth of partnership. You can't be devastated by someone leaving if you never truly let them in. You can't be betrayed by someone you never fully trusted. Your pain tolerance created safety, but it also created distance. Here's what people who underestimated you don't understand. Your pain tolerance isn't static, it's evolving. Every challenge you survive doesn't just prove you can handle it, it expands your capacity to handle more. You're not recovering from trauma and returning to baseline. You're integrating experience and leveling up. That's the difference between healing and transformation. You've been quietly building something that most people won't recognize until it's too late for them to catch up. While they were avoiding discomfort, you were learning to weaponize it. While they were seeking easy paths, you were developing the capacity to walk through fire. While they were protecting their comfort zones, you were expanding into territories they'll never have the courage to explore. That military psychologist saw the early indicators of something that's still unfolding. You're not done becoming whatever you're becoming. The pain tolerance you've developed isn't the end goal. It's the foundation. It's the prerequisite for the next level of operation that you're just beginning to access. Most people plateau after their first major trauma. You've been using each one as a launching pad. The transformation isn't about becoming softer or more open or more trusting. It's about becoming more precise, more intentional, more strategic with your energy and attention. It's about taking that operator-level resilience and applying it to creation instead of just survival. It's about recognizing that the same strength that got you through the worst can now build you the best. Everything you've gained came at a cost that nobody else had to pay. While others were developing normal relationship skills, you were learning to survive psychological warfare. While they were building conventional success, you were rebuilding yourself from fragments. While they were worried about fitting in, you were trying to figure out how to exist without falling apart. That's not a fair exchange, and pretending otherwise is insulting. You've paid in sleepless nights, in hypervigilance that never fully turns off, in relationships that couldn't handle the intensity of what you carry. You've paid in moments of peace interrupted by flashbacks, in joy tinged with waiting for the other shoe to drop, in success that feels hollow because you're experiencing it alone. The price of your strength has been the loss of certain kinds of innocence that other people get to keep their whole lives. But here's what nobody tells you about paying that price. You can't get a refund, and you can't go back to who you were before. The knowledge you have, the capabilities you've developed, the perspective you've gained, those are permanent installations. You're living in a different reality than most people, one where you know exactly how bad things can get and exactly how strong you actually are. That knowledge changes everything. The question isn't whether the price was worth it because you didn't choose to pay it. The question is what you're going to do with what you bought. You've purchased clarity, resilience, discernment, and autonomy at costs that would bankrupt most people. Those aren't just survival traits. They're the raw materials for building something extraordinary. Something is shifting now that you've been given language for what you are. Being told you have the pain tolerance of a trained operative isn't just validation, it's permission. Permission to stop minimizing what you've survived. Permission to stop pretending it wasn't that bad. Permission to recognize that your strength isn't normal, and neither were the circumstances that forged it. You're starting to understand that the people who called you too much, too sensitive, too intense, they were actually experiencing accurate threat assessment. You are too much for people who can't handle intensity. You are too sensitive for people who prefer superficial connection. You are too intense for people who've never had to operate at your frequency. Their discomfort wasn't proof you needed to change. It was proof they couldn't match you. This recognition is dangerous for everyone who benefited from you not knowing your own strength. Because once you fully understand what you're capable of, once you recognize that your pain tolerance is actually a superpower, you stop accepting treatment that doesn't match your worth. You stop settling for connections that require you to diminish yourself. You stop participating in dynamics where your strength is exploited rather than honored. The reckoning isn't revenge, it's realignment. It's you finally operating from a place of accurate self-assessment rather than internalized criticism. It's you recognizing that being able to function through extreme pain doesn't mean you should have to. It's you understanding that just because you can handle something doesn't mean you're obligated to tolerate it. You're not going back to who you were before that psychologist confirmed what you've always suspected. You're not returning to the version of yourself that apologized for being too much or not enough. Something fundamental shifted in that moment of recognition, and there's no reversing it. You've been given a framework that finally makes sense of your experience. Now you're learning to operate from strength rather than survival. You're learning that pain tolerance isn't just about enduring, it's about choosing. You get to choose what's worth your resilience, what deserves your emotional investment, who earns access to the parts of you that you've protected so carefully. Your capacity to handle pain doesn't obligate you to accept it from every source. This is where the real transformation begins, not in developing more tolerance, but in developing more discernment about when to use it, not in becoming harder, but in becoming more selective, not in proving you can handle anything, but in deciding what you want to handle. Your strength was forged in necessity, but now you're learning to wield it with intention. You're building a new operating system that honors both your capacity and your worth. One that recognizes you can survive anything, but refuses to accept that as a standard. One that maintains operator-level awareness without operator-level stress. One that keeps all your protective capabilities active while creating space for experiences beyond survival. Everything you've survived isn't just your story, it's a blueprint. Every impossible situation you navigated, every betrayal you metabolized, every wound you integrated, all of it creates a map for others who are still in the territories you've already crossed. Your pain tolerance didn't just save you, it's preparing you to recognize others who are going through what you survived. You're becoming the person you needed when you were going through it. You're developing the capacity to witness pain without trying to fix it, to validate struggle without minimizing it, to recognize strength in others that they can't see in themselves yet. That military psychologist confirmed your resilience. Now you're learning to confirm it for others who need that mirror. This is the unexpected gift of operator-level pain tolerance. You can sit with people in their worst moments without flinching because you've been there and worse. You can hold space for intensity that makes other people uncomfortable because intensity is your native language. You can recognize survival in progress when everyone else only sees dysfunction. Your legacy isn't going to be the pain you endured. It's going to be the strength you became and the permission you gave others to recognize their own. You're not just surviving anymore. You're translating survival into something that serves. You're taking the hardest lessons and turning them into the most valuable teachings. That military psychologist gave you something more valuable than validation. They gave you a new lens for understanding your entire life. Every moment that felt like too much, every experience that seemed unbearable, every situation that should have broken you, all of it was training for something you haven't fully stepped into yet. You have the pain tolerance of a trained operative, but you're not in the military. You have resilience that rivals professional preparation, but you developed it in real-world conditions. You have capabilities that people train years to acquire, but you built them in the fires of necessity. That makes you something different entirely, something that doesn't fit in conventional categories. The world needs people like you more than it's willing to admit. People who can function in chaos, who can make decisions under extreme pressure, who can maintain clarity when everything is falling apart. Your pain tolerance isn't a liability or a sign of damage. It's preparation for whatever comes next. And if you've survived everything that came before, imagine what you're capable of now. This is your confirmation. You're not broken, you're not too much, you're not damaged beyond repair. You're exactly what happens when someone develops operator-level resilience without operator-level support. You're what survival looks like when it refuses to just survive and decides to transform instead. And now that you know what you are, the question is what you're going to build with it.